Again, I next want to go to my great friend from the state of Tennessee, Mr. Fleischmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for appearing today and for your testimony. I represent the great people of the 3rd District of Tennessee, from Chattanooga to Oak Ridge, 11 wonderful East Tennessee counties. Personal note of thanks, not only for the rhetoric and policies of this administration in regard to the Department of Labor, but to the successes that you've had, and I think you have aptly stated those, so I thank you for that. Several years ago, right after my first term, I began a workforce development initiative in my district. I was trying to find something that not only Republicans and Democrats could sit around the table, but we could have employers, employees, educators, and civic leaders, and there was a need for that, and there still is. So that has really been my main focus in this area of jurisdiction. So I want to applaud you for your efforts in that regard, and I want us all to continue to work forward as Americans. I think when employers and employees can work together, America does move forward, and I come at the process in that regard. I do have a question. Mr. Secretary, there are 4.9 million American youth between the ages of 16 and 24 who are neither in school nor employed. As you know, the $1.7 billion Jobs Corps program at the Department of Labor is the nation's largest residential job training program for at-risk youth between the ages of 16 and 24. And yet, there seems to be a mismatch between the training that is offered at Jobs Corps centers across the country and the actual jobs that are in demand and expected to grow in the market. For example, in 2015, the Department of Labor issued a joint jobs report with the Department of Transportation and Education that found that transportation sector will need to hire 4.2 million new workers by 2022, and that the trucking industry in particular has by far the largest number of projected job openings at over 2 million jobs that need to be filled in that spot. Yet, according to the Department of Labor's website, only 4 out of the nation's 122 federally administrated Job Corps centers offer any type of training in heavy-duty trucking. Mr. Secretary, do you know why truck driver training is limited to only 4 Job Corps centers, and would you kindly consider expanding the number of Job Corps centers that offer truck driver training, sir?
Congressman, thank you for the question, and let me address it on a few levels. First, I do not know the why, but I will gladly consider. More broadly, this goes back to the point that I mentioned with military training. If you're licensed to drive a truck with explosives in the military, why can't states recognize that license when these service members come home? That is a no-brainer. Let me say more broadly on Job Corps. I would very much like the opportunity to sit down on with individual members and start discussions about the Job Corps in their particular states. Right now, Job Corps is a very large national program, and it is operating the same way it operated as far back as the 70s. I had the opportunity to visit a very different model. I was in Nevada, and I had the opportunity to go to, I believe it was Truckee Meadows Community College, and that community college was working with a program called Youth Build. And I talked to some of the students in that program, and then I asked the administrators to sort of leave the room. I put on my old prof hat and just talked to the students directly. And I was really moved. One of the students said that they had been on the streets, that they had been taking drugs, that they had seriously thought about ending their life. And then they found the Youth Build program that is working with this community college that is also working with businesses. Partnership between education and business and Youth Build. And here's what they were doing. He was learning to be an HVAC certified repair person. For the first time, he had an apartment. He rented an apartment, and he was really proud of that. And this program per capita is a lot less expensive than Job Corps. And so one of the questions that I think we need to ask is not an elimination, but an asking, is the way that educational services through Job Corps was provided in the 70s the best approach, or should we be looking at alternative mechanisms within the Job Corps system, perhaps changing what is taught, perhaps changing the age range, perhaps changing the length of study? And it doesn't have to be the same for every Job Corps around the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Chairman, I believe my time is up, so you'll back.
Done better than anybody else.